3 weeks to protect the NHS. Stay home to flatten the curve. Just hold on until summer, then it's over. Well, now it's forever. Everything that we endured, everything that we complied with in order to get back to normal has now apparently gone out of the window because the experts say we're never getting back to normal. They're now suggesting COVID restrictions will never be lifted. UK government medical officer says masks should be worn for years. Biden's 100-day mask challenge is now wear masks for the rest of the year. And the UK government promised no vaccine passports. Now they're about to implement them. Some restrictions should last until all adults have been vaccinated, senior health official says. First it was back to normal when the elderly and vulnerable are vaccinated. Then it was when the over 50s were vaccinated. Now apparently it's only when everyone is vaccinated. They move the goalposts every single day. Newsflash, all adults are never going to be vaccinated. Bloomberg, when will life return to normal? In 7 years at today's vaccine rates. 7 years, that's 2028. But now they're telling us that even after the majority of the world's population is vaccinated, the restrictions will still remain in place because of new mutant variants and new viruses. We were also assured by governments that they wouldn't impose mandatory vaccinations. Now they're saying, well, they're not going to be mandatory. You just won't be able to have a job, travel, or buy things without one. But they're not mandatory.
Suitcase, check. ID, check. Boarding pass, check.
But do you have your vaccination passport? It could be the new standard in traveling.
Quite simply is it will be required.
No jab, no job. No injection, no individual right to mobility.
Early models will likely be physical, like these created by award-winning scientist and inventor Isaac Daniels.
This is the e-vaccine, which is electronic vaccine passport.
You know that little white card that you get after your vaccination? Well, the same information goes into here. When you got your first dose, which one you got, and the date. You can have that information right here in this book, or you can access it electronically.
When you go to the airport and just like your passport, and they just swipe it, all your information already there.
Greenberg says vaccine verification for travel could be mandatory on cruise lines and some airlines as soon as July.
First it's international travel, then it's public transport, then it's to get into a sports stadium or a cinema, then it's to get into a grocery store. Where does it end? We don't even have to imagine where this might lead. We need only look at China. Just as it pioneered lockdown, it is now blazing ahead with digital identification. A health colour code exists. Green allows a person to move around freely, enter offices and shops and take public transport. Yellow or red will deny them entry. The code is based on location data taken from individuals' phones as well as self-reported information. Data is also shared with the police. We need to further harmonise policies and standards and establish fast tracks to facilitate the orderly flow of people, said President Xi Jinping, as he called for a global mechanism to enable international travel. Rolling lockdowns are also here to stay. That's the precedent that we allow to be created. Every time there's a single COVID case in the entire state of Victoria, Australia, they lock down the entire territory for days. This is part of a new approach called Zero COVID, where instead of learning to live with the virus as humans with functioning immune systems have done for our entire biological history, it now must be eliminated completely. But that's only feasibly possible in remote places like New Zealand, where they can impose strict border controls. They're never going to close the borders in Europe, so we're never going to reach zero COVID. And that's the point. By setting the standard of zero COVID, that enshrines the necessity of rolling lockdowns. Whenever the state decides to impose them, on a whim, at the drop of a hat. The codifying and normalisation of lockdown powers will now be abused by governments, particularly in authoritarian countries like China, as an excuse to crack down on unrest and silence dissent for years and decades into the future. This will also entrench a tattletale society where people are rewarded with social credit score points for snitching on their neighbours. We'd be naive to think that this isn't going to happen here. It already is. We gave them an inch and they took a mile.